we'll kick off with you.
Yeah,
You recently went to Snowflake Summit.
yeah, Summit was really cool. It was interesting. First year, so I was trying to get a couple other folks to go from on-prem to one of, including one of the owners of the firm that basically I report to, and he and I were having a discussion, and his question was, first year, it's not going to be great, and I said, I'll bet you it will be pretty good,
Yeah.
because they're pretty good organizers. And unfortunately, I never actually got a Slack record of him accepting my $100 bet on this, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to collect. But it was pretty good. They capped out at 100 people. So I'm sorry, 1,500 people. So what was interesting is about 3 weeks before the conference, even if you wanted to go at the sign up, they were like, "Too bad, sorry,
Yeah.
already." So Hilton Union Square in San Fran, interesting keynote by, I want to say Frank Slootman is his name, who's their new CEO. So they replaced, Bob Muglia was their existing CTO,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, CEO. And he was pretty personally involved with the company. He had been at Microsoft and had led their SQL Server group for about, I think, 10 years or something like that. I'm sure this is all on Wikipedia and, but so I think they had a shakeup in their corporate leadership because Frank Slootman led ServiceNow to go public a while back. And my guess is they want to go public, and they're bringing in a CEO that they think they can give the right guidance. And they've also done a big sweep of the executive suite. I know that they replaced a lot of their other executive group, and Frank brought in the people that he's interested in. So he spoke, he gave the keynote. And then after that, they had a couple of different keynotes during the week talking about a lot of different features. I think, for this group, some of the really interesting stuff, and I was pretty impressed, was they announced, yes, by Q3, I think was the date they gave, you will also be able to run Snowflake on Google Cloud Platform, in addition to Azure and AWS. I believe there is already in preview format, you can already pull in data from GCP's equivalent of buckets, even if you're running on Azure or AWS. So, you could, if you have someone else that's sending you data and they're like, look, we're going to put it in Google and you have to get it from there, you could transparently get it out of there with Snowflake. They also displayed an organizational concept because right now, say you have 2 or 3 different Snowflake accounts, and we have some clients who do that. Like some people say, oh, I want my dev environment to be one account and my test to be another, instead of having it be different databases, same account. Or you have different groups in your organization that want to have separate Snowflake accounts or whatever. They now have an organizational concept kind of similar to AWS, where you can have different Snowflake accounts that roll up to the same organization for billing purposes, but it separates out the technical administrative capability. So the org administrator has the billing oversight and control, but they can't even necessarily see the data or anything in the separate Snowflake accounts. Then after that, they started talking about database replication, where, say, even on AWS, you have a Snowflake account that's in US West 1, and then one that's in US East 2. And traditionally, those would be 2 separate accounts. And if for some reason you need to get data between them, I think you could do data sharing or something. But they also showed now how they have full, real, true database replication, where you can have a database in one account, and then you can, say, do near real-time replication to another Snowflake account, whether it's my account or whether it's someone else outside my organization. And within seconds, data inserted, updated, deleted, or whatever from one Snowflake account like a read-only replica is available in the other account. And that's different from data sharing, because you have other capabilities and things you could do in that replicated database that in data sharing, it's all locked down, right? You're only accessing the share. And what really blew my mind is they said, oh, not only are we doing this within one cloud platform, you can set up inter-cloud database replication. So you can have in your organization, when Snowflake rolls out the organizational concept, I could say, all right, I have a Snowflake account that's in US East 2 on AWS. I want, within the same organization, I'm going to create a Snowflake account that's running on Azure in Europe. And then in GCP, when it's available, I want to create a Snowflake account that runs in, South America. And I want to set up near real-time database replication of a database from the AWS account to both the accounts running on the other cloud platforms. So basically they're building a whole world, and there's some other features I can mention in a minute, but they're building a whole world where they're trying to like eat the data world, where, you know, it's like the Roach Motel. You just go in and you never leave, right? Because it's so, except it's a pretty powerful computing environment, but they're trying to eliminate all those barriers where it's like, oh shoot, I have to dump it out for somebody else somewhere, or I have to go to S3, or I have to go to Kinesis or Kafka or whatever else, right? Um, so those are some things. There are other things that they showed where like they have an internal task scheduler for running tasks within Snowflake now. They also have a concept of streams where you can monitor a table in Snowflake, and without you just point it, and it basically, the stream generates a CDC, a true CDC of like what the chain inserts, updates, and deletes to the rows are in the table coming out of it. And then you can write another task that consumes that CDC. And what they're trying to do with all this is moving away from a world where it's like so batchy, where you could literally do full-blown streaming applications within Snowflake, combined with a native Kafka connector that would allow you to do true streaming micro batch insert of data into there. So it was pretty, like, it was pretty impressive, all this different stuff.
Yeah, that sounds pretty wild, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
like even Braze recently announced that they're like doing data shares if you're on Snowflake. So they store like, so Braze is an email like campaign tool.
Yeah.
To get data out of an email campaign tool, you have to get Stitch involved or Fivetran and like hit their API and then get
Or God forbid they export the files to an S3 bucket and you have to ingest them and all that stuff.
Yeah. And instead they're just like, well, we're going to set up a share. And it's just like, that is a fundamental change to the data stack that we have been recommending and implementing for like the last few years. Like, and I think it's kind of exciting. Like a lot of things you're talking about will fundamentally change stacks if you're on Snowflake. And create vendor lock-in, which is not a good thing. But like you said, it's a compelling hotel to stay at. Even if it is a Roach Motel you never leave, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the Roach Motel thing was a joke. I probably should have. I just meant like it's so attractive once you get in there that it's sticky. It's like to your point, it's very hard to get out.
Yeah.
And they also, and I've talked to some folks at Snowflake internally. Their real revenue model moving forward is the data sharing marketplace.
Sure.
They have a whole marketplace they set up, which is sort of like their equivalent of like an app store. But what they're selling is sort of like, they're encouraging other vendors to not only start up Snowflake accounts, but to like, say you're a weather data vendor. Like you publish a service where you not just sell individual shares, but like your business is reselling shares to other people with accurate, up-to-date weather data, and they're providing a model where you can, through Snowflake, you can charge other people on a recurring basis for the share that you're providing to them, and then Snowflake takes a cut of it. So it's called like the data exchange or something like that. Let me see if I can find a link to it. That also enables a model where, say you're like, okay, I'm a manufacturing company and I have an analytics team on staff, but I'm not really equipped to do like full-on predictive modeling or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I have my data warehouse and it has my basic data set up and it's in there. Okay, I pull the data in, I share it with another vendor who is like, their thing is, oh, we do advanced predictive modeling. They do the stuff. They dump it to another database. They share it back with me. This all happens in Snowflake. They start setting up a service to do this. I can essentially transparently outsource and have other people do more advanced analytics work for me that I'm not capable of doing myself. And that wouldn't have been practical to share before because of all the ETL and data moving issues that you talked about.
Fascinating. Cool. My other thing that I'm kind of just personally interested in was like, what kind of people attended Snowflake Summit? And I only ask this because like I went to a Snowflake customer lunch last year. They were very early days in Australia. We were one of like 3 paying customers in Australia at this point. And I remember turning up and I was like the youngest person there by a very long time. I wasn't wearing a suit. And people were like, their minds were blown that like, you know, I was managing an entire data stack by myself because they were very like Oracle kind of like
Where's your compliance group and your audit team and your
Yeah,
blah, 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 yeah.
So yeah, was that the same crowd at Snowflake Summit as well? That more like traditional, kind of Oracle enterprise?
You know, it was interesting. There was quite a mix. You definitely had the suits. You didn't have a lot of, I mean, this wasn't like the data science conference where you have the guys wandering around with the Che Guevara t-shirts and the sandals, right? I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of that, but there was a fair amount of engineering people. And there was a fair amount of this interesting kind of new world where it's like people wearing business casual. So they're not like, fighting against the establishment sort of, but you'd talk to them and you'd be like, okay, you're borderline mathematician, or you're like a startup founder, or so it wasn't old big school corporate. Like you showing up the way that you're talking about you would have clearly been more in one group, but it wouldn't have been like, who are you? And we don't get it. Right.
Yeah.
They clearly are, their biggest market that they're trying to take down is Teradata and Redshift and the other kinds of people like that. They're also firmly setting their sights on with the Cloudera and like the Hive or the Hadoop kind of meltdown that's been going on. They're clearly setting their sights on that. And one of the technical co-founders got up and he was talking about, he's like, look, people have been talking about the death of SQL for 30 years. I can tell you, we think SQL's here to stay. We think it's a great language. We think it's, and they are, interestingly enough, thinking about, though, the use cases that are problematic. Like there are certain kinds of calculations, like when you're doing machine learning or other things like that, you just can't cram into SQL. Yeah. And they are thinking about how do we natively run those in Snowflake without having a they have the Spark connector or something, so you can dump it out and pull it back in, but crossing that whole database boundary is kind of painful. Yeah. Right? And so they're clearly thinking about, could we ever get to a point where we're running other languages in there?
Yeah.
But they're totally saying it's SQL and for most things, and we're going there, and that's, that's the deal. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. I feel like I've attended without having to pay the huge fee. The nice thing was, if I'd been in my old company, I think they actually flew my manager out. If you're a paying, I don't know, because we were early and big brand name, so got lots of nice things with that.
Yeah, you got the tchotchkes.
Yeah. Which I think is kind of a good segue then, hopefully, Emilie, if you're happy to segue into this. Emilie sent me a link earlier today about a package she's working on, and it's Snowflake related. Do you want to very quickly talk about what you're working on, Emilie?
Yeah, happy to. So first I'll give a little intro and then I'll share my screen. But we were looking to manage our Snowflake spend, and we had some initiatives in mind, but we wanted to see what the outcome of those initiatives were, like very regular business questions. And our solution to that was actually to build a dbt model around the Snowflake tables, and then build a Periscope dashboard. Periscope is the BI tool that we use at GitLab. So we built a Periscope dashboard that can share that. We have moved these models into a package that anyone can install. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. I want to make sure only to share what I want to share. So do you see GitLab right now? Yeah, great. So the package is here. It's called Snowflake Spend. It still needs a lot of documentation. It has some stuff with it now, but the models that it produces are pretty straightforward. We're pulling from the warehouse metering table with Snowflake. We do include instructions here in the schema.yaml, and these will render in your docs around, here they are, around how to make sure you have access to this model. So we have the permission or the statement right there. And then this does take one variable, so I'll highlight that, where whatever your cost per credit is. And once you plug that in, it will adjust the spending information to your specific group. To see what that looks like in practice, because we have this merged now, I think, is if we go to our project under transform dbt, you look at our packages.yaml. Oh, nope. Then it's still an OpenMR, but I will show you all anyway. So if you look at our new packages.yaml here, and we look at the file, you'll see it right here. So the cool thing that I'll highlight here is that we have both references to hub and get style packages in the same packages.yaml. I can't share the screenshot of what the dashboard looks like, but I'm going to put a dummy / anonymized version of it in the docs for this package when they're ready. So that's all I've got.
I think that's really cool. I've been thinking a lot about packages lately. Josh, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just was wondering, Emilie, what permissions, because I think maybe you have to have some more permissions to get access to that data than just a standard user, right?
Great question. So I'm gonna drop a link here in the chat in a second, and we use a permission bot to manage our permissions. And so it's actually, you can see what permissions our users have, including our DBT user. So I'll find that and I'll drop that in the chat.
And then does Snowflake eventually, out of the underlying tables, they eventually age out some of the billing data? So do you have to like do an archive or something off of this to make sure you keep all the history, or does it never go away?
To my knowledge, it doesn't go away, but we've only been on Snowflake since the fall.
Okay.
So we don't even have a year's worth of data yet.
Yeah.
That would be worth double checking.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, it's funny that you did this. Like I was sort of thinking like, oh, it'd be so cool. Like we talk about analytics and calculations as a service, right? And I was like, man, I'd love to have the package for some other clients that pulls us all together, especially like I could see this would be so useful for developers, because normally to see the billing dashboard, like you have to be an admin of the account, but you kind of want your developers to know like, hey, you keep running these monster queries and it's costing us like 20 credits a day. Can you think like, how do you expose it without giving them admin rights? And this would be awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this, Emilie.
Yes, no problem. I'll let you know that my current plan is to prettify, add some docs, things like that. And then eventually I'll share it in a discourse post where more people can hear about it, hopefully.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. I have a few things that I'm also on the packages front, so we can do some nice segues here from like Snowflake to Snowflake package to packages. But I also am aware there are a couple other people on the call, so I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in and chat about something rather than me cannibalizing the time. I'm gonna take silence as we're all good. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Great. Oh, this is not the view that I wanted it to be, but that's fine. This is what it looks like when I edit docs. Literally 5 minutes ago, we just refreshed. We published our new docs on package management. The old docs were just, they needed a refresh. And so packages were actually a thing that I didn't use much before I came to Fishtown. So I think in part because they were kind of a confusing concept to me. So we spent a lot of work like, what is a package, like, and why should you use one really? And then better documentation around when to use the package syntax versus Git versus the local syntax. Even things like, I didn't know we could do this, but apparently this is the best way to specify version numbers on if you're using the hub side. So for those who don't know, this is hub. And the cool thing about it is it does semantic versioning resolution. Anyway, so you can use inequalities, which helps if you have multiple packages that refer to DBT utils, as many of our packages do, or any other shared dependency. So, yep, docs always getting updated. A lot of work goes into documentation, and then sometimes it just gets released and no one notices anything. So I don't know. I like to think that it's a good thing to do. Anyway, so other things that I'm also working on in the packages space is I recently have started working on 2 new packages. The first one's called Audit Helper. We may be renaming it to Audit Zen because I was using it this week. And normally auditing data is a thankless and frustrating task. And instead I felt extremely zen while doing it. So we may rename it. But basically this is, so far it only has one macro, and the use case for this is essentially we work with some clients who have old pipelines, like in Luigi, or in I'm working with a company that uses a pipeline called Pentaho, and when we try to replace their pipelines with like a modern stack instead, and to do that we kind of need to provide assurance that we're replacing like for like. And so this one, it's the new version of it, I should actually be on the branch, is called Compare Relations. And it gives you this beautiful summary table which says, hey, like of your 6,900 records-ish, or 6,879, 6,870 are perfect matches, and 9 only exist in one and 9 only exist in the other, which you can kind of like figure out that means that probably one of your columns is wrong or something like that. So the cool thing about this and the way that we're thinking about packages into the future is like models of like packages used to have models and macros that you would integrate into your project, but this is a macro that you would like want to run while developing, and then you wouldn't actually want to put it into like, it's not a test because you're not trying to get this test to pass forever. You just want it to like a point in time to use this query as a tool to help you while developing. And so the way that it's actually the most useful for me at the moment is in like dbt Cloud. So this is like an old relation results. So order ID, customer ID, and its status. And then this is, you know, my dbt version of this model. And because I have this package installed on my project, I can say, these are my two relations. So my old table and then my new one is just pointing to my reference. And I've got like a pretty good match across the two. And then it's all a bit like janky at the moment, but we're getting there. So it compiles the SQL. So you can look at the compiled SQL. And I've like commented out helper SQL there. So this should, any second, it's probably, oh yeah. dbt developers still in beta for good reasons. It's not perfect. But yeah, this should execute and actually give me the records that don't match up. So I can say like, oh, okay, my customer ID, sorry, for 66, like my thing's showing a different date. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's a different date. So then I could like exclude that from my validation, because maybe you have like a column, you know, a metadata column with like loaded at time that you don't want to compare. And yeah, so these are the things that I've sort of started working on that recently. We're also going to add some macros that like compare to like the relations in two schemas, or compare the like columns and column types of like two relations. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm Oves, by the way. I work at ClearCover as a product and data.
Cool. Ooh, I think you jumped back on mute there.
I have, imagine a downstream model, the final model that acts as a report and served to the company. And then there's a base model. I think we need to change the base model. But at the same time, we don't want anything to be disturbed in the final model, the downstream one.
Mm-hmm.
So can this be used to actually check that once we change the base model, whether the final model was changed or not?
I mean, I guess so. Like, the idea is that you should have a table which reflects like the current state, or a view that reflects the current thing. So whether that's like your production table of view, and then when you're working on a branch, you could use this to point to like the version on the branch, and then just do that like record by record. And the thing, like, we have this as a macro that would say, like, as a test that would say if it was a perfect equality, this test passes. But that's really hard to do when you're like, one of your tables was refreshed 15 minutes ago in production, and you're working on like a development branch where you just hit dbt run, so you already have like records out of sync. So yeah, this could definitely be used to help in that situation where you like either want to make sure that things have changed. Make sure that things haven't changed. That's more the use case that like it's a like for like. Or you could say, hey, I want everything but that column to have changed. But it's a very early package. We haven't even cut a like first release of it. So if there's like a use case, like there's so many things. We all like used to write our own queries for these, so we just consolidate them. You know,
agreed. Agreed. Is it released already, or is it still in?
It's open source. It's just not. We don't have a version number on it yet because we don't have an integration test. Trying to get it fast.
Got it. Thanks.
I will put that in the chat. Oh, Emily says it's starting. Yes, it is. So very, very quickly, the other one we've been working on is a code gen package, which is pretty cool as well. So if you follow the Fishtown SQL style, we're doing some code gen around models. So that's cool. Cool. We're going to wrap up office hours, and I'm going to jump on the London DBT meetup Zoom. The link for that is in Slack as well. Hopefully some of you join us there as well. Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Claire.